YB stays on your neck.
It's on my neck.
Yo, my Dazn, make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and obviously hit the bell for notifications. So as you've all heard by now, Joe Saunders has left Frank, Fish Eyes, Warren, and I've got to say, I am happy. Billy Ho, the reason I call him Billy Ho is because he ain't never fought no one. He don't want to fight no one. Everyone sucked him off after his David Lemieux fight. Everyone, oh yeah, David Lemieux, he did a boxing lesson. Listen, Billy Ho Saunders is going down the Tyson Fury route, or he was, yeah? To be fair to Billy Ho, I'll give him some respect because thankfully, Billy Ho feels like he's about 50 years old. He's been around for ages, but he's done nothing. Seriously, he's been around for ages, but he's done absolutely nothing. Seriously, what's he done? All I know is, for the last 10 years, he's been banging around, and what has he done? Not a lick. David Lemieux is probably a top 30 fighter, top 20 fighter probably, if we're honest with ourselves. Top 30 fighter, banging around. Billy Ho Saunders was quickly becoming Tyson Fury 2.0. Actually, tell a lie, that's being disrespectful to Fury, because when I think about it, even though Fury ain't been doing much, at least Fury fought Vlad, at least Fury's fought Wilder. This Billy dude has never fought an elite dude, ever, and they're the same age. Seriously, they're the same age. At least Fury's been off for 3 years. Fury was off for 3 years, and still he's managed to fight two elite fights. Meanwhile, this dude Billy Ho don't want to fight no one, and I'm sorry, all this business of he wanted the Canelo fight. He's been offered like top level fights. In the main one for me is Demetrius Andrade. Andrade wanted him badly. He wanted him bad. Andrade wanted Billy Ho like AJ wants Fury, and like Dillian White wants Fury. That's how bad it is. He wanted him bad, and Billy Ho literally ran off to 168, and this makes me laugh. Everyone wants to suck Billy Ho off. Why didn't he box Andrade's head off? I think that was a 50-50 fight, by the way. He gave up his belt and he ran off. Andrade wanted to fight him. The WBO had him mandated for the fight. Why didn't he do that? All the Billy Ho fans, explain to me why he didn't do that. It was going to get robbed again. No, don't be taking no methamphetamine nose spray and you'll be just fine. Anyway, at least you lot have got the backstory now. Let's move on. Let's move on to brighter pastures, to more healthy pastures. This here is very good news. Bottom line is, Fish Eyes could not deliver for Billy Ho Saunders. I'm not one of these people, to be honest, who actually disrespects. I'm not one of these people who actually thinks it's all to do with promoters. I actually weigh on the fighter's side. A lot of people say, oh yeah, Frank Warren hasn't been able to deliver. A lot of people also say, oh yeah, Eddie Hearn couldn't deliver for Kell Brook. It's not actually about that. It's more about if fighters are prepared to fight you or not. Simple as that. To be fair to Billy Ho, I actually believe he wanted to fight Canelo, but that's no good. It's like saying, oh well, he wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather. Everyone wants to fight Floyd Mayweather. Everyone wants to fight Canelo. To be a top fighter, you have to fight top fighters. You can't. Billy Ho cries, oh, I wanted to fight Golovkin. I wanted to fight Canelo. That's not good enough. And besides, let's get it right now. There was a time when Golovkin was available to fight, around 2014 time, I believe, 2015 time. But Billy Joe Saunders came out in a press conference and said categorically, when him and Chris Eubank Jr. were at their rematch table, he said, I'm not fighting Golovkin, he would knock both our heads off in the same night. That was his attitude. When Golovkin was available, he didn't want to know. Now all of a sudden Golovkin's old and slow, Billy Ho's all over. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. You have to strike when the iron's hot. Unfortunately, it's not been hot these last few years. And besides, you've got to make the fans want that fight. If Billy Ho had gone in there, yeah, as an example, people want to suck Billy Ho off for beating Lemieux. Fine, let him beat Lemieux. If he'd have built on that, he beat Lemieux. What year was that? 2015 was it? 2017? I don't know. It was years ago, man. Damn years ago. If he'd have built momentum, as an example, he could have beat Lemieux, then beat someone like Andrade. That's how you demand them kind of fights. You don't demand them kind of fights by, oh well, I beat Lemieux 4 years ago, I want a Canelo fight. You don't. That's not how it works. You have to build momentum. You have to force, same as the Charlos, to be honest. The Charlos, they're another one. They're not even signed by, like, that's the other thing. Billy Ho wanted the Canelo fight, and he wasn't even signed by them people. What planet are you on? Same as the Charlos. Oh yeah, we're not, number one, the Charlos and Billy Ho, what they've got in common, Neither of them fight anyone, and neither of them are signed with the right promotions. That makes sense. There's two ways you can go about getting a fight normally. Number one, you can actually drum up business, i.e. actually fight people. If the Charlos and Billy Ho were knocking out or beating top 5 fighters, that would genuinely create the demand for the Canelo and the Golovkin fights. They're not doing that. They're sitting around fighting stiffs and making demands whilst they haven't got any name. It's unbelievable. But now at least Billy Ho has found his senses. He's allegedly, as you can see on your screen now, he's allegedly, well, likely to be joining Hearn. And this is what The Sun exclusively reported early this week. Eddie Hearn is confident that he can provide Saunders with the fights he most craves. The Matchroom boss said, Billy Joe really has had no momentum in his career. How he hasn't had a big fight, I don't know, because he is a quality fighter and he is wasted at the moment. We shall see. Canelo is up. Canelo is up for fighting Billy Ho Saunders. And so was Golovkin, but they couldn't get it done. It's not easy making big fights. Kell Brook has wanted Amir Khan and Terence Crawford fights for years, but it just doesn't happen like that. Billy Ho was extremely loyal to Frank Warren, and I admire that. Listen, one thing we do know, Canelo is at Dazn. There's not a whole lot of 160 fighters there, or 168 fighters. There's not a whole load of them there. There's a few, but for sure. Look, Danny Jacobs got the shot. I am certain Billy Joe will get that shot within probably 12 months, I'd have thought. Well, one thing for sure. However long, I actually don't believe Billy Joe should get it within 12 months. I believe Billy Joe's only 30. I think by about 32 he should get it in the next 2 years. And the reason I say that is this. Billy Joe should go to Dazn. Yeah? No, you don't just join Dazn and get a big fight. No, build him up. Go to Dazn, have maybe one or get active. One thing Eddie Hearn does well, and he doesn't get enough credit for, is getting fighters active. Tevin Farmer, a perfect example, in there multiple times a year. Yes, he's not fighting the best fighters, but guess what? He wants the best fights. He's been calling out Gervonta. Gervonta don't want it. So in the meantime, rather than fighting once a year because you can't get the big fights, that's another thing Billy Joe does wrong. He sits around crying about it. Get in the damn ring, stay in shape, keep on it, keep your tools sharp. Same as Andrade. He's another one, active. I rate that, and that's because we've earned Hearn. And the worst thing that Billy Joe suffered with is being inactive, getting too fat, too slow. It's not good. You're athletes. You're like you don't get your prime years for young. If you've got plenty of time when you're 40 years old. You can spend the next 40 years being slobbily and laying around the place. These next 5 years, you need to be on it, man. Fighting 4 or 5 times a year if you're going to be fighting bums. If you're having blockbuster fights, yeah, even that though. He's been fighting once a year and they've been bum fights. But I'm glad anyway. He'll get with Hearn. As I was saying, I think they should really target Canelo and Golovkin in 18 months. Maybe not so much Golovkin, but Canelo. I think it should be like, get him active. The next year, just be getting fights in. Then maybe look for an Andrade. Then maybe set up the winner of Andrade versus Saunders. To be fair though, Canelo's going to need opponents, so I think Canelo can probably fight Andrade and Billy Joe. But that's the thing. Before, people don't realise the golden age of boxing, the 70s, 80s and 90s, people can lose. That's the problem now. You've got a load of... even I'm not a victim, even I'm accused of that sometimes. Even what I've just said there, I've basically said that, oh yeah, well, Andrade and Billy Joe shouldn't fight because Canelo will need opponents. But ultimately, so what? Billy Ho and Andrade should fight, and if one of them loses, Canelo can fight the loser anyway as time goes on, once they build up. There's too much put on this zero, man. Get in there, let's get the good fights going. I know it's a bit of a pipe dream, but that's what I'd like to see. And one thing for sure, Billy Joe, he's not going to be in a worse situation under Hearn. Financially, he'll be better off. Promotionally, he'll be better off. And he's in the right promotion. It just so happens where the cards have landed, Eddie Hearn's in a good position for the 160 situation. Bottom line, no doubt about it. Dazn is the place to be for 160, 168. Simple as that, no doubt. Let me read out Billy Joe's statement as well whilst we're here. This is what Billy Joe had to say. First of all, I just want to say a massive thank you to Frank Warren for everything he's done for my career over the past decade. Frank signed me after the 2008 Olympics and was with me every step of the way as I won British, Commonwealth and European titles before becoming a world champion in 2 divisions. Come on, man, you ain't 2 division world champion. let's call a spade a spade. I'll give you the 161, but you're not a 168 champion, man. That WBO business is a complete joke. It feels a little bittersweet, and I'll always be appreciative for everything Frank has done for me. We'll stay close. And I actually feel not a bit sad, but I always remember Billy Joe and Frank Warren being like, that was like the staple. Does that make sense? But things have to progress. They really do. And the bottom line is, he hasn't been delivering for I know it's not. I'm not blaming Frank Warren, actually. As I said earlier, I don't really blame promoters, because if the other side don't agree, yeah, there's no amount of promoters are going to get that happening. Whilst Eddie Hearn might be able to get it done now, put it this way: if Dazn hadn't come along, I'm not sure Eddie Hearn would have been any more able to get the Canelo fight than anyone else would have been able to. Does that make sense? End of the day, it comes down to pounds and pence. But one thing I will credit Eddie Hearn with, over Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, he's able to offer, even without the zone, he was able to offer bigger money because he's got a bigger platform, and, in my opinion, and probably statistically speaking, he's got a better promotional business. He's a better front man. He sells it, doesn't he? Eddie Hearn, he sells it. He actually creates value. Promoters like Don King actually used to create value. Does that make sense? I don't feel Frank Warren really creates that kind of value. He's a promoter, but he's not like, he's not bringing. But I reckon people go to some matchroom shows just because Eddie Hearn puts them on. Does that make sense? He's got a massive following in his own right. But anyway, before we go, let's see what Fish Eyes had to say. Fish Eyes: Warren has no ill feelings towards Saunders and paid tribute to the two-weight world champion. He said, "I've really enjoyed working with Billy Ho Saunders throughout his whole professional career, and guiding him to become British, Commonwealth, European two-weight champion, blah, blah, blah. I'm personally very fond of Billy Joe, and I wish him every success in the remainder of his career." Well, that was short. Bottom line is that, listen, Fish Eyes is salty, and I don't blame him, man. Listen, Eddie Hearn is what we call cleaning up. And that's another thing as well. Billy Ho Saunders is doing what Tyson Fury should have done. And actually, that moves me on to my last point. It's quite interesting thought to have as well. Whilst I've spent most of this video kind of gassing Eddie Hearn up and speculating that Hearn will bag this Billy Joe guy, there is a lot of speculation that potentially Billy Joe might not actually go to Warren. Sorry, might not go to Hearn. He might go to Top Rank. He might go to Top Rank and join Tyson Fury, which would make sense. They're in the same camp and they're with the same management team. However, what's kind of going against that is not only what Hearn said here about being confident he can bag Billy Joe, but also the fact that Frank Warren and Top Rank, they're already kind of in bed. So it makes sense. Look at Fury. Fury is currently working with Frank Warren and Bob Arum. So it wouldn't make sense if Billy Ho was to go to Top Rank. Why would he have left Frank for? It'd be a lot easier to transition to Top Rank under Frank Warren. So that's kind of shut that one down, in my opinion. But I'll be intrigued to see what you guys think anyway. And allegedly, honestly, before I go, apparently he's been offered a $30 million check as well. $30 million offer, which in this day and age, it might sound big, but in reality, you put in there, if Billy Joe can beat Canelo, there's 30 million in itself. Does that make sense? Especially with Dazon's kind of money. If that's a 6-fight, that's probably a 6-fight deal. That's probably a 6-fight deal with Canelo and Golovkin thrown in there. Which is $30 million, ain't bad, but listen, you weren't getting that with Frank. I remember the Andrade versus Billy Joe Saunders, the first fight, which didn't happen. That was alleged Billy Joe was going to get a massive record payday, which was $2 million. So this here being touted at $30 million, this is life-changing for Billy Joe Saunders. And remember, that $2 million, he was gassed off it. I know for a fact he got paid 500 grand against Lemieux. That's how much he got paid, 500 grand. So this is what we're dealing with, man. Frank Warren's been slacking, and Billy Joe's allowed it. But fair play to him for taking. It's a hard thing to do, but fair play to him, man. Frank's had plenty of time to prove himself. He hasn't pulled through. Give Eddie Hearn a go now. Eddie Hearn might fail. I doubt it, but he might. Let's see what happens.